Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams, and I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. Our Sunday service is at 10:30. Yes, we are meeting in person, 10:30 Sunday mornings. If you're local, come check us out. We'd love for you to come one Sunday morning and be our guest. If you're not local, check out our service stream. YouTube, easiest way to find us there is calvary316.live. You can check out our church Facebook page. We stream there as well, facebook.com/calvary316. And then also our Twitter handle is @calvary316, and you can watch our service there. And so if you're in person, come join us. If you're not local, no worries. Check us out. We're currently working our way through the book of Daniel. Again, my name is Zach Adams, and we have taken a bit of a summer hiatus, and it has been crazy. The truth of the matter is that coronavirus had set in. We did a number of shows about the coronavirus. We were getting closer and closer to the end of May, approaching a whole new batch of episodes for June and July. And I reached out to Josh Brown, his productions, our producer, and I said, brother, I need a break. I need to take a hiatus. The Outlaw Radio Show, in case you're unaware, we're platformed on several different modes. First, we are a radio show. First and foremost, we've partnered with wonderful radio stations across the country that air our show in its entirety. We're so blessed by many of these churches that own radio stations and that want to just proclaim the gospel into their communities. Very cool people. And so we produce the show, the Outlaw Radio Show for radio. There have been shows. We haven't really taken much of a break. If you've been listening on radio or presently are listening on radio, you will have noticed that what we did is we kind of re-aired a set of about 8 episodes, things that we hadn't re-aired before, kind of reaching back into the vault, things that we felt were good shows, relevant, some wonderful interviews. For those of you that listen on our podcast, so every episode of the Outlaw Radio Show not only is produced for radio, but then it's packaged and released on our podcast. The easiest way to find our podcast is our website, which is outlawradio.org. In case you're unaware, podcasting, very cool. So let's say you're listening on the radio, but you can't listen to the episode in its entirety. You're in the car and you can't just chill out for 52 minutes, not to worry. The podcast, the audio, you can download the whole show in its entirety. In fact, you don't even have to download it. A podcast is basically kind of an RSS feed. So you go and you subscribe to our podcast. So when we release new content, it automatically downloads to whatever device you consume content through, whether it's your iPhone or Android or your computer, tablet, whatnot. And so the show, it's a radio show. It's then transferred and produced down for podcasting. Which is very cool. Again, if you've been listening on the podcast, we have not been re-airing those episodes because they're already archived, and so that would be redundant. You have enjoyed, hopefully, a break as well. But then, really, this year, we started a whole new thing. So the show is not produced live. So you're listening to me. I'm in my studio, in my home, and I am recording audio that then I send to Josh Brown, produces it for radio. He sends it back to me. I produce it for a podcast. But we record it. It's all pre-recorded and then kind of produced down into the show. And so what we started doing, and we had experimented around with it just a little bit over the course of the last couple of years, but really with the pandemic, we kind of dove into the deep end. And since I sit here and I record the show, we thought, why not go ahead and videotape that and then stream it online? And so we've started doing that. As a matter of fact, if you're listening right now, there is video content of this episode already on the internet. So if you're listening on the radio or if you're listening on the podcast, check out the video version of the Outlaw Radio Show. And the easiest way to find it is our Outlaw Radio YouTube page. outlawradio.live is the quick link. Again, outlawradio.live. And when I sit down to record this weekly show, we're going to hit record on the cameras, and we're going to package that, produce that, release that. If you are a big fan of the show, what makes the video version to me very exciting is that it's released as soon as it's edited. And so it allows me to speak towards topics that are relevant to the week I'm recording. And so I can sit down, I can bang something out, and man, it can be streaming out. Again, YouTube, Outlaw Radio.live, or our Facebook page, which is The Radio Outlaw. We can get it out really the next day. It takes a little bit for stuff to hit the radio, just because of the production schedule and all that's required for that. And then it takes not as long as radio for it to be podcasted as well. And so if you are obviously not necessarily able to sit down at a computer or your smart TV to watch, you can always listen. Again, multiple platforms that you can enjoy the Outlaw Radio Show. Our show is designed to discuss relevant topics in an honest, genuine, but bold way. And in doing so, we hope that our show kind of deconstructs the negative perception that the world has of Christians by talking about things that matter in a real, honest, sometimes raw way. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, I have a unique perspective, and some people enjoy that, other people don't. But you will always know what I'm thinking. I'll always do my best to try to articulate what I'm thinking, and I don't ask that you agree with me. One of the bad raps that Christians get is that somehow we're monolithic in the way that we think, that every Christian has to believe all the same things and think the same way. Within the Christian tent, there is room for the diversity of thought and opinion. Now, it's true that there are essentials to the faith. There are things about our faith that are non-negotiables, beliefs that having them makes you a Christian, and not having them means that you're not a Christian. I'll just say that as bluntly as possible. Jesus said that he is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. He's the truth. There is the truth, and then there is the truth standing in contrast to what is false. There are essential beliefs that make you a Christian. And I'm not necessarily referring to that, but let's be real. There are a lot of other beliefs, and really the application of certain principles that the way that they play themselves out in our lives are not always cut and dry. There is room for a diversity of thought, opinion, application. Truth is truth. But oftentimes the way that truth is applicable also depends on circumstance and context. It's not always black and white. There's a lot of gray. So, yes, this show is my opinion. It's me speaking my mind. It's me unpacking the world around me as I see it. To the best of my ability, processing these things from a Christian, a biblical, an orthodox worldview. But you don't have to agree with me. And I think that that's something that is totally lost in this cancel culture. This secular world champions diversity and tolerance. It celebrates diversity as long as you don't disagree. As long as we all think the same way, that, there's inclusion. People are getting shouted down. People are getting shadow banned. People are being canceled. You either toe the line or you get cast aside, banned from the public square. Christians should hold and celebrate the diversity of thought, even thoughts that we disagree with, hoping that in turn we can agree to disagree agreeably. What a lost art in our culture. You either believe what I believe or get out. I don't want to listen to you. I'll block you and ban you. Shut up. What a sad turn of events with such a, quote, open-minded society. So our show, we want to discuss things that are relevant in an honest and genuine way. We don't ask that you agree with everything that I say. As a matter of fact, I champion disagreement. If you disagree, reach out to us. In fact, when we start the next block, I'll give you some contact information. But with the time I have left here for this first 14 minutes, is I want to kind of explain why we took a summer break. Now, there are, I would say, 3 reasons. The first 2 are very personal, and the third one I think will set the stage for the rest of the show. First, I was tired. This pandemic has stretched us all to an extreme. In fact, I'll be real. I thought that, man, I'll take a couple weeks off, and by the time I get back to Outlaw Radio, this coronavirus will be a thing of the distant past, and we can move on to new subject matter. I was wrong, because here we are, late July, approaching August, and it's still the same old, same old. In fact, things have gotten much worse, and we'll get to that. I was tired, man. Just the grind. Not just social distancing, not just the shelter in place, not just the grind of day in and day out, the stress of worrying about your family, the stress of what's going to happen with the finances. I pastor a church. The stress of Lord, how are we going to make the mortgage payment? Am I still going to have a salary in the next 2 months? Do we apply for a PPP loan? Do we not? I mean, when do we open? How long do we stay closed? Should we stay closed? I'm churning out Bible studies. We're service streaming. I'm recording multiple Bible studies, editing them, packaging them. In addition, we're doing the Outlaw Radio Show. I'm just being real. When Josh was like, man, I need more episodes, I was like, bro, I don't know if I have anything in me. And I've always felt that the one thing I'm not going to do for you, the audience, is grind. I think you ruin a show that way. I've always felt that way when I get behind the pulpit on a Sunday morning. If I'm not excited about what I'm going to share, if I'm not enthusiastic, I need to not be there. I need to tap out, readjust, realign, re-energize, refocus, because it comes across. Like, if you're not enthusiastic about what you're about to preach on a Sunday morning, man, the audience understands it. I've actually heard it said as kind of a rule of thumb for you preachers, that your audience will always have about 80% of the enthusiasm over what you're teaching that you do. So if you're like 80% enthusiastic, you're at like 65%. That's where your audience is. So they're kind of with you, but not really. Meaning that if you really want your audience with you, you can't even just be at 100%, because then your audience is like 80%. Yeah, that's a good Bible study. Man, you want to be like 130%, so everyone's with you. Man, it comes across, it's palpable. Man, when you have something to say and you're enthusiastic about saying it, it comes across well. And I just felt that for you, the listening audience, it was better to re-air some shows that I was very enthusiastic about versus just grinding in the midst of being tired and feeling as though we were getting into this monotony. Every week it was the same thing over and over and over, and we've got to deal with it. It's relevant, but I was wore out. So first, the reason we took a break, full disclosure, very personal reason, I was tired. And I needed a break. That also related to the church. We decided to reopen our doors May 31st. We've stayed open since. That's unique to Georgia. We've been blessed that way. But reopening, we continued to do our service stream and didn't transition back to a live stream. That also required tons of work on behalf of yours truly. Calvary 316 is a small church. I am the only employee. And so it was also increasing my workload. We're running against a hard break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of the Outlaw Radio Show. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams. I mentioned in the setup of today's episode that we don't want to be monolithic in thought. Yes, this show are my opinions. I hope that they're well thought out. I believe them with my conviction. I'm open to persuasion. I am not always right. I'm open to being wrong. I'm not infallible. I'm not perfect. God is the one that's infallible. God is perfect. He's the unchanging one. I have no problem saying when I'm wrong. But yeah, this show is my opinion, and you can disagree. That's cool. That's encouraged. If you do, man, I want to hear from you. I promise that I will air your disagreements on the air. Like, we will discuss them. I'll unpack them. I'll address them. And if you persuade me, I'll say, man, I was wrong. This guy brought up this point, and it was spot on. If you want to reach out to us, there are several ways that you can connect. First, the easiest is our email address, which is info@outlawradio.org. Again, we are also on Facebook, facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw. And then we are on Twitter at @radio_outlaw. So again, just repeating that, info@outlawradio.org, facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw, and Twitter at @radio_outlaw. If you're like, I'm not going to remember any of that, just remember outlawradio.org. That's our website. You can find all of our information there. I should also mention, if you're listening on one of our wonderful radio partners, thank you so much. This is a radio show. If you are listening on our podcast, man, thank you so much for being a faithful podcast listener. If you're listening on the radio and you can't listen to this episode in its entirety, that's okay. Go and download the podcast. This episode has already been podcasted. If you're listening to either, and you're like, I'm kind of interested to know what Zach looks like, every episode of the Outlaw Radio Show is also being videotaped. I say videotaped. This is an old school way of saying we're videoing and then producing and streaming out the Outlaw Radio Show as well. And it's, again, this episode's already hit our YouTube channel, which the easiest way to find is outlawradio.live, as well as our Facebook page and whatnot. So I encourage you to also go check out those things. Subscribe, raises our profile. If you like the episode, share it with your social media network. All those are cool things. As mentioned, we took a bit of a break this summer. I needed it, man. I was tired. And anytime I'm feeling tired and I'm feeling like I have to force myself to do the Outlaw Radio Show, it's always a good indicator that I need to take a break. For your sake and for mine. I don't want this to be a chore. It's my ministry. It's something that the Lord supernaturally dropped into my lap. And I take it seriously. So anytime that I'm feeling wore out, that I'm feeling like oh, I got to do another episode. Josh Brown, our producer, can you leave me alone? I just need a break. I take a break. I should say, just on a side note, but related, that's a good rule of thumb, and just in life in general. I mean, it's okay to rest. As a matter of fact, like the entire way that God structured, not just the way humanity was to operate, but how we were to relate with God, it was founded on rest. God didn't need to rest. It wasn't as though God was tired after creation, and yet he set a precedent. We work for 6 days, and then we rest on the seventh, the Sabbath day. God set the precedent in the book of Genesis, and then he kind of codified it in the law. God was clear, work 6 days and rest on the seventh. Now, I think in a modern day application of that, we should rest for 2 days, because the truth is that we need 2 days to rest. Let me explain. Our work week is established in America Monday through Friday, a normal work week, Monday through Friday. But most of us don't work our own land like the Hebrews were. Like their work and their home and land were all intertwined. So they were working their home and their land for 6 days, and then as a result, they could literally take 1 day and do nothing. For us, I don't know if you can relate to this, man. I work Monday through Friday, and then it's like, Saturday, if I only had 1 day, Saturday is not just like, I got to mow the yard. I got a honey-do list, that kind of rolls itself out that I can never reach the end of. Like in America, we get to a day of rest and just work more, because there are things around the house, things that we've got to get done not related to our actual work. Very unique in our context, which is why I think if you're taking the essence or the ideal of what God was trying to articulate in a day of rest, for us, we need 2 days. For me, my work schedule is I work on Sunday. Shocker, I'm a pastor. I work Sunday. And so my weekend starts on Friday. And Friday is the day that I continue to work. I just don't do Outlaw Radio, nor do I do church-related things. I mow the yard. I do work around the house. I wash our vehicles. I try to spend time with my kids. Like I'm coaching soccer. I'm doing this, coaching baseball. Like it's Friday is not a day of relaxation. It's a day of actually more physical labor than I would normally be doing in my day job. But then come Saturday, man, I try to tap out. Try to turn off the phone. The yard's mowed. Things are taken care of. I'm not honeydew listing. I'm sleeping in. We're going to the pool. I'm resting and relaxing. It's okay to rest and relax. Now, my point, getting back to the subject, is that, man, I just needed a break. I needed to rest, and it was a great break. Like, I must say, I spent a lot of time at the pool. Now, our neighborhood pool, those knuckleheads couldn't keep the chemicals right. I don't think they wanted anyone there because of the coronavirus anyway, but they made sure that the pool was closed half the time. Thank goodness, hallelujah, Jesus, that one of the elders in our church has a beautiful pool, and they live half a mile away from us. And so most of June and July, we've spent at the pool, resting, relaxing, spending time with friends. I have been taking care of my yard. There are things that needed to be done around my property. I don't have much property. Got 3/4 of an acre, give or take, but I got a lot of grass that needs to be mowed. I owe that to my wife. I've got a bunch of kids. Man, we were able to go to the beach. Yes, we took a vacation and went to Ormond Beach just north of Daytona. On Monday through a Friday, it wasn't long. But man, I used my phone to get us to the location because I'm terrible with directions. And then when we pulled in the parking lot, I turned my phone off and then turn it back on again till I needed it for directions to get home. You should totally do that, by the way. Detox. No TV, no news, no phone. I was off the grid. So refreshing. I will say I did kind of go through some withdrawals, some nights of cold sweats. Where's my phone? Where's my phone? I need Twitter. But I survived. And it was good. As a result, it was very therapeutic. You should do that as well. But man, we took some time off and just so refreshed, just really excited. I got back from vacation and Josh reached out and said, "Hey man, how you feeling? How you doing?" And I was like, "Bro, I have got so much to say and I am ready to rock and roll." And I really am. I hope you can hear that in my voice, that I'm excited to get back here to recording the Outlaw Radio Show. But I mentioned that there were more than just that one reason why we took a break. I mentioned 3 reasons. The second reason is that, and some of you, depending on where you're listening, your brains are going to explode. They say elections have consequences. I'm going to say something controversial. This whole pandemic and the way that it's been handled, I am so glad, I am so thankful that Donald Trump is president and that I casted a vote his direction. I cannot imagine if Hillary Clinton was president right now. We would still be in lockdown. We would all be forced to wear face diapers, even if we're outside exercising. Like, things would look crazy. The economy would be tanking. There would be all that's still happening. Anyway, I live in the state of Georgia. And at the end of April, and again, I gave, during certain points of this pandemic, I gave our Governor Kemp, I gave him some grief. In fact, I called him at one point a few fries short of a Happy Meal. I still think he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, but the man has stood on conviction. And I am glad that I cast a vote for Brian Kemp, because I can't imagine what it would be like if Stacey Abrams was actually our governor. Now, she thinks she's our governor, but thank goodness she isn't. I don't care what she thinks. She's not. Brian Kemp is. And at the end of April, if you recall, he made a very controversial decision. He came out and he said, "We are reopening the state. Enough of this. We're reopening the state." Now, beyond that, I'm also just so thankful that I live far enough outside of Atlanta that the mayor of Atlanta has no control over my life. Now, if you followed the news and if you've followed local politics at all, right now there's even a lawsuit. The mayor of Atlanta was wanting to reverse all of the opening, going back to phase 1. Brian Kemp's like, "No, I'm the governor. I set the mandates," and they're in a lawsuit to settle this. I'm glad Trump's my president. I'm glad Brian Kemp's my governor. I'm glad I don't live under the authority of Miss Bottoms in the city of Atlanta. We live in Walton County, which is outside of Athens, Georgia. It's kind of between Atlanta and Athens. We're for the most part, rural and very conservative. And as a result, we have uniquely been led by people applying Rational common sense. And let me give you an example of this. So I coach my son Quincy in baseball. He's playing 7 and 8. We would call this Pee-wee. We moved to Walton County Park this year. It was our first time. We left what's Gwinnett County, went to Walton County. It was a big step for our family, but we felt like the Lord was leading us to do this. When the shutdowns all began, it was a Thursday and Friday. Our opening day was Saturday. I had a team. We'd been practicing for about a month and a half. The boys were excited. We had opening day coming up, and then everything got put on hold. Now, all of the counties around us began shutting down their baseball parks and canceling their seasons. Walton County, thank goodness, was like, listen, we can't have a season yet, but instead of making a decision, we're going to give this some time to play itself out, which they did. And as things were developing, hey, we'll let you guys know where things stand in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, we got an email letting them know we're not quite ready to make a decision, but we're not going to cancel. We're going to give this some time. Now, I want to hold that thought. Again, we're running against another hard break because we played a baseball season. I know, that's crazy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on the Outlaw Radio Show. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams. If you're listening on radio, thank you so much. We are so grateful to our radio partners. If you're listening on the podcast, man, thanks. We would encourage you to leave us a review. Give us a 5-star rating, share out this episode, pass the word. If you're watching this episode as it's being released on our YouTube channel, which is outlawradio.live, or our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw, or for that matter, even our Twitter page at @radio_outlaw, man, we welcome you. We thank you. Like it, share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. These things go a long way. So I mentioned 3 reasons why we took a summer break. 1, I needed rest. It was a good thing. 2, we had a baseball season. Now, what ended up happening, so the end of April, I believe it was like the 30th, our Governor Kemp, came out and said, listen, we're going to reopen. Enough of this. We're not going to destroy the economy. We think we can reopen responsibly. And he took a ton of heat. I mean, a ton of heat. Now, he said some stupid things, but, man, he made a decision, and he stood on it. And his whole deal was we want to allow Americans to dictate their own lives. We want to allow Americans to have the freedom to make their own choices. To this day, we don't have a statewide mask order. You don't have to wear a mask via governmental edict. Now, the mayor of Atlanta and some other municipalities have tried to, but they're now being sued by the state because Kemp's like, you should be free to make a choice. Or as I've been saying, my body, my choice. So Walton County, the county that we live in, instead of canceling our baseball season like all the other counties in the state of Georgia and really across America, they slow played it. And then when the governor made this declaration, Walton County sent out an email and they said, coaches, we want you to reach out to your teams. Again, we had already been practicing before the shutdown. See who's still game to play. If, people are scared about it, that's okay. We'll give them a refund. See who's on board, because as of right now, what our plan will be is we're going to let you guys start practicing middle of May, and we're going to do a 10-game compressed season in June. We were excited. I only have one kid on my team that couldn't play because his mom was pregnant, going to have a baby in June. That made total sense to me. We only had one team in our entire league that had to fold because they couldn't get enough players. Those players that wanted to play were spread out among other teams. Little Miles ended up on my team. And so sure enough, man, middle of May, we started going to the ballpark practicing. I should mention that not only do I coach my son Quincy, but I'm the assistant coach for my other son, Theodore. Quincy's 8, Theodore's 5. So we started practicing, and between 2 teams, man, we were practicing almost every night. It was great, man. After being cooped up, we were outside, breathing fresh air, doing some social distancing, being smart, responsible. And then sure enough, come June 1, that Monday, we started playing baseball. Again, we were playing games between 2 sons every night. condensed season, 10 games the month of June. And then halfway into June, they came out and they're like, hey, this went so well. No COVID cases, no one wearing masks, but that's okay. No one's been infected. We want to do a countywide tournament, July 7th through the 11th, which I was pumped up about because I had a good baseball team. Quincy's team ended the season 8-1-1. We tied a game because it was like 100 degrees on a Saturday that we played, and our boys got tuckered out. No excuse, but we tied a game, which is terrible. Tying is like kissing your sister. It's just something you shouldn't do. You shouldn't do it. And then the one game we lost, the Blue Jays. We lost to the Blue Jays, which was irritating because we were down a few players who were on vacation, questioning where their priorities were at the time. But we should have beaten that team. We played our worst game. Anyway, so I was pumped. I had a good baseball team, 8-1-1. Countywide tournament, all the parks in Walton County, all the teams, single elimination. And again, we played another 4 games in the span of 4 days at the ballpark every night between Quincy and Theodore. And so just to be honest, between trying to pastor a church, really 2 churches, let's be real. I'm pastoring those that come on Sunday in person, and then I'm also pre-recording that Bible study, producing the worship for the other church that hasn't come back in person and is meeting digitally. Hopefully we can get those 2 churches back together sooner than later, but that's another topic for another episode. The point being, between church, between baseball, between trying to rest and relax, it was like, Josh, I got to tap out. Thirdly, and this will set the stage for the rest of the episode. Man, with what was going on at the end of May, I was scared about doing an episode of the Outlaw Radio Show. Again, the whole heart is to discuss relevant things, like things that are happening in our society, things that are happening in our culture, trying to unpack these things from a Christian worldview, from a Christian perspective. How should we grapple with these things as Christians? And man, with what was going on, I was like, it might be dangerous for me to do an episode of the Outlaw Radio Show. Now, let me again kind of recap what's gone on that led me to this particular concern. So we had, hitting us mid-March, a full-blown shutdown because of the coronavirus. The coronavirus came to the shores of America, middle of January. There were rumblings of it starting to spread a little bit in February. Things started to get worse in March. There were travel bans from China, travel bans from Europe. Finally, it hit the fan, you know what I mean? Second week of March, from one Sunday to another Sunday where the world changed. Took us all a bit off guard, shocked us all. There was a run on supplies. Toilet paper was scarce. I built a garden. We immediately switch over to live streaming, service streaming. We can't meet in person. You're sketched out to go to Home Depot. People are ordering in their groceries, but you're not bringing them in the house. You're setting them in the the porch, letting it air out. School gets canceled. People aren't allowed to go to work. Things are nuts. The stock market plummets about 10,000 points. The unemployment rate goes haywire. 20, 30 million Americans no longer working. Restaurants are closing. People are being, it got crazy, right? Not only that, but basketball, we're in the middle of a basketball season. Some of the players start testing positive. And then within the span of 3 days, the NBA season is canceled. We're in the middle of spring training with baseball. It screeches to a halt. We're not sure if we're going to have a baseball season. Golf cancels. The Masters, which was supposed to be the second week of April, my favorite week of the year, gets postponed. We're not sure if it's still going to happen in November. The world changed. You couldn't go to church. You couldn't go to work. You couldn't go to restaurants. You couldn't go to stores. Hospitals were getting overwhelmed. The virus is spreading. People don't know who's getting infected. The death rates are all over the map. We're looking across the globe. It was crazy. So many things that that we thought we knew, we began to learn weren't true. Hey, masks, you don't need masks. The general public don't need masks. We heard that from the World Health Organization. We heard that from the CDC. We heard that from the Attorney General. We heard that from the Surgeon General. Excuse me. We heard that from Dr. Fauci. You don't need masks. Masks for the general public will probably do more damage than not. And now, like, you're killing grandma if you go out without a mask. This whole virus started in a wet market there in Wuhan, China. And then we come to find out, well, wait a second, maybe it wasn't a wet market because there wasn't those type of bats there. Maybe it was actually released on accident from a P5 biolab there in Wuhan. Shutdowns, lockdowns, social distancing. And then we get to May, right? Started with the state of Georgia beginning to ease the restrictions. The economy had taken such a hit. People are like, we've got to get back to work. Like, there won't be an economy to come back to if we don't figure out a way how to live with this virus, flatten the curve. Remember that? Remember that? We had flattened the curve, to keep the run on hospitals. We didn't have enough PPE. We had to get that in mass production. We didn't have enough ventilators. We had to get more ventilators. We were worried about New York not having enough hospital beds, so we're building hospitals in New York. We've got 2 different ships that are floating out, one to Los Angeles, one's to New York City, and none of this stuff ended up being used on the scale that we thought. And come May, things started normalizing. Like, things started kind of easing the restrictions. People started going to the beach. People maybe still working from home, but started venturing out into the grocery stores. Churches started talking about reopening. Ours did at the end of May. Life began to normalize. The coronavirus, while it had dominated the news and was still a relevant topic, was starting to kind of, move its way back a bit, down the headlines. It wasn't trending quite like it was with Twitter. The damage had been done. Other things were pressing. And then what happened? We had George Floyd's death and the video that hit the internet of that white officer standing on his neck as he's crying out, I can't breathe, crying out to his mom. And what happened? America started to burn. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with the Outlaw Radio Show. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. We're in our last block. Time's flying by. This is what happened when you rest and you relax and you get re-energized and you get pumped to get back in the swing of things. I got a lot to say. It'll be easy to fill episodes for the next month or so. Why did I take a break, a summer hiatus? 1, I needed to rest. 2, we had baseball. I had to take care of my family and really take care of my church family as well. And there's only so many hours to the day. And in order to rest, you got to, work some priorities. 3rd, I was worried about what I was going to say with what was happening. So if you recall over the last couple of months, and I'm going to kind of just fly by this, we moved from the coronavirus. Things began in May to start to normalize. Churches are reopening. Beaches are opening. Vacations are being planned. People are thinking, we flattened the curve, the hospital load. It's all right. Yeah, people are warning, there might be a second wave. There might be a spike in cases. But what ended up happening is then you had this George Floyd situation not just dominate the news, it relegated the coronavirus to the back burner. As a matter of fact, for about 2-3 weeks, you didn't hear anything about the coronavirus. It was the outrage about the death of George Floyd, which was outrageous. What happened to that man is unexcusable. That being said, there's a way in which we should handle, as a society, those type of situations. We have a legal system for a reason. We have due process for a reason. We have fundamental to our society the idea that you're innocent until proven guilty as part of our bedrock. Yes, the video was horrific. Yes, it demanded outrage. And what happened? People were outraged. And I do think that at least for a day or two, maybe a weekend, there was an organic demonstration of people hitting the streets en masse in outrage of what had taken place. Maybe for a day or two. I also think, and would love to see stats on it, no one's dared do a poll, I also think people were just tired of being cooped up inside. And it was like, I'm getting out. I don't care. It's been 2.5 months. I've got cabin fever. Enough is enough. I need the sunshine. And you had across America thousands of people flooding into these city centers, not wearing masks, protesting. What quickly emerged was BLM. Black Lives Matter. Now, as I'm watching this stuff happen, I know what Black Lives Matter is. Now, yes, Black Lives Matter, along with white lives and Latino lives and Asian lives. And if you have a problem with it, I got a problem with you. That being said, Black lives don't matter any more than any other life. Black Lives Matter, I knew what it was. It's a political arm of the Democratic Party. Go to their website and read their manifesto. They don't believe in the nuclear family. They're anti-Israel. They have strong roots into some of the violence of the 60s, the terrorists of the 60s, the Black Panther movement. It's a crazy thing, but it took over. Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. I'm watching my Facebook page, and people across are making their avatars this black dot. Christians, good people, making this black dot when it's like you're supporting Black Lives Matter, and you don't realize you're supporting an organization that's Marxist, that hates you as a Christian. They hate you as a Christian. They don't stand for what they stand for or what you think they stand for. It's a charade. But then I'm also watching the news, and I'm like, these people are en masse protesting. And just 2 weeks earlier, I heard all these news pundits on air saying, how dare these Christians want to go back to church? Well, we have a First Amendment right of assembly, don't we? How dare them say they have a First Amendment right of assembly? Well, don't we have the freedom of religion? How dare them say they have the freedom of religion? And then you have all these people not wearing masks, not social distancing, flooding the streets in the middle of a pandemic, and not one peep about it at all, the coronavirus, about them spreading the coronavirus. Coronavirus was off the back page. We turned to race division in America, and it got nasty, it got ugly, and it has gotten violent. Now, again, I think initially there were some good people out, just wanted to get out, also wanting to make a point. What happened to George Floyd is unexcusable. But the idea of systematic racism, and then what you've seen as a result, if you're white, according to BLM, you are automatically a racist. Well, yeah, but they don't know what I believe. It doesn't matter. You have genetically, you're predisposed to racism. Everything you do is racist. Everything you think is filtered through this racist bone that you can't get rid of. White fragility has become a talking point. And then things have gotten violent. Cities are burning. Clashes with the police. What happened? Defund the police. That was the big platform of Black Lives Matter. Yeah, there are some bad cops. There are bad pastors. That doesn't make every pastor bad. You might be good at your job. There are other people who are bad at your job. That doesn't make your entire profession bad. There are bad cops. That doesn't mean that all cops are bad. And to think that our society can function in any sensible way without the police is insanity. So what happened? We had the death of George Floyd. We have protests. Peaceful. Black Lives Matter gets involved. Defund the police. These mayors are now talking about defunding the police. The police are being ostracized. The police are being ripped over the coals. They're being demonized. You've got retirements in New York City hitting an all-time high. You get actual funding being cut by New York City, by Los Angeles County, by the crazy crackpot mayor there in Minneapolis. And I knew what was going to happen. You start defunding the police and demoralizing the police where, I don't know if you heard of the blue flu, where police officers are like, en masse saying, I'm going to take some sick leave. These protests started to turn violent, started to be infused with terrorist organizations like Antifa. Again, militant wings of the Democratic Party, because you don't see the Democratic Party condemning them in any way. As a matter of fact, they're excusing them even presently. Cities begin to burn. The cops are being ostracized. The cops step back. We have violence rampant, which really revealed to you the true intentions of Black Lives Matter, because you have death rates soaring in major American cities, right? And where's the outrage from Black Lives Matter? Every weekend, you have 50, 60, 70 people being slaughtered in Chicago. Chicago, it's more dangerous to live there on the south side than it is in Baghdad. and yet not a peep about it. So all this stuff's going on, all this stuff's happening, and I'll be honest with you. I was afraid of getting myself into trouble. I wasn't sure if you, the listening audience, or just anybody, was ready to hear what I had to say. I wasn't sure if I was ready to get canceled. And yet here's the thing, and this is the big point of today's episode. Taking a break, spending time with my family, resting, relaxing, honing in my vision. It's time for the silent majority to speak up or we're going to lose our country. What is happening right now is nothing shy than an organized, concerted takeover of our freedoms. I didn't even get into the Supreme Court. I didn't even discuss yet what's happened to religious liberties. There is a sleeping giant in America that's seeing what's happening, and they're upset. And they don't want anything to do with it. And don't believe a poll for a second. You ask me my positions, a pollster, I ain't telling you. Something like 63%. People said, I won't tell a pollster what I actually believe. In fear of the repercussions. People are speaking their minds and they're getting canceled. Speaking their minds and getting fired. Christians going to church and being arrested. Taking a stand. Good old John MacArthur recently took a stand, and I give him a week or two, and that guy's going to be taken away in handcuffs. It is time for us to take a stand and to be vocal and to speak up. And you know what? I took a step back because I was afraid. I needed a rest. But friends, I am re-energized. I am jazzed up. I'm upset. And I'm going to speak the truth and speak my mind and say things that are politically incorrect. If you got a problem with it, find a different show to listen to. You've been listening to the Outlaw Radio Show. If you liked what I heard, tell your Christian radio station you're glad that they're carrying our programming in your area. Visit our website, which is outlawradio.org. You can access our podcast, which is available on Spotify, Google, as well as Apple Podcasting. Additionally, outlawradio.live is our YouTube channel, Twitter at radio_outlaw, info at outlawradio.org. It's our email, facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw. Once again, my name is Zach Adams, and I hope you join me this time next week for more of the Outlaw Radio Show. Well, if you're watching this, the episode just ended. That audio is going to get produced, sent to Josh. That's what will be podcasted. I don't know if you can tell, I'm a bit fired up. I got a lot to say. Full disclosure, these are my opinions. These are my positions. This is how I view things. This is not anything that I would necessarily preach from the pulpit because that's a different venue. It's a different avenue. There's something sacred about the pulpit. The pulpit is not there for my politics. The pulpit is not there for my opinions. The pulpit really isn't even there for my social commentary. The pulpit is a historical thing that exists for the preaching of God's word, the teaching of God's word, the exposition of God's word, which is what I leave it for. That being said, the Outlaw Radio Show is not a pulpit. It's a radio show. And I'm not necessarily functioning in a full pastoral role. You can't take that hat on and off. But I'm just speaking as a dude, man. As a Christian, as a father, as a husband, as someone who cares, as a patriot. I love our country. Does it have faults and warts and problems? No doubt. Name one that doesn't or hasn't. Can America be made better? Sure. But what's being presented right now will not make America better. It'll make it much, much worse. And it'll make it a much more dangerous place for you and I and for our children. Now, granted, no disillusionment. I know exactly how this all ends. It ends by getting much worse, getting much more violent, an antichrist emerging, and Jesus destroying it all and ushering a kingdom. That being said, I'm not down to be fatalistic. What will be will be. What Jesus decides to do in his time frame, that's on him. That's in his sovereign will. I got no problems with that, no qualms. That being said, until Jesus' kingdom I kind of like the country I live in. And it's time we start speaking out to protect it before we lose it.